The words hung in the air like poison. Useless girl. Can't even rinse properly, and my entire body went rigid in the doorway. Through the kitchen entrance, I could see my 6-year-old daughter's shoulders trembling as she balanced precariously on a step stool, frantically scrubbing dishes while tears silently tracked down her cheeks. My mother stood over her, arms crossed, lips pressed into that familiar line of disappointment. On the couch just beyond them, my sister's twin daughters lounged with their tablets, occasionally looking up to giggle at my daughter's desperate attempts to please. One of them whispered something that made the other burst into cruel laughter. The grocery bag slipped from my fingers, shattering the jar of pasta sauce I'd brought as a peace offering. The red liquid spread across the entryway tile like blood, fitting for the murder of my last illusion about this family. Everyone turned at the sound, faces transitioning from shock to discomfort to practiced innocence in seconds. My daughter's eyes met mine, filled with such raw relief and simultaneous shame that something crystallized inside me, hard, sharp, and unbreakable. My name is Abigail, I'm 37 and a financial advisor. Years of careful investing and living below my means had built a substantial cushion, one I'd been using to support my parents while neglecting my own future. Raising my daughter alone since her father relocated overseas 3 years ago, I'd built our life carefully, with intention. This is the story of how I dismantled a dynasty built on conditional love. I had driven 6 hours straight from the airport, following an instinct I couldn't explain. The kind that wakes you at 3 a.m. with your child's face behind your eyelids. I'd cut my business trip short without warning anyone, the unease growing stronger with every mile marker. My parents had always preferred my older sister Bella. With her picture-perfect twins and carefully curated social media presence, she embodied everything they valued: appearances, achievement, conformity. I had accepted their favoritism toward her, but I never imagined they would transfer that same toxic hierarchy to our children. When I'd reluctantly left my daughter with them for the week, they had promised stories, baking lessons, and the grandparent experience I'd never had growing up. Instead, I returned to find her transformed into their household servant, invisible except when they needed something cleaned or fetched. "What exactly are you teaching her?" I asked, my voice so controlled it barely sounded like my own. My father emerged from his study, dismissing my concern with a wave. "Don't be so emotional, Abby. Kids need discipline. Clara's girls understand how things work here." I looked at my daughter again, tiny fingers red from hot water, eyes downcast, the tightness in her small shoulders reflecting a burden no child should carry. She didn't cry out loud because she had already learned the most devastating lesson they could teach: in this house, tears earned no compassion. That moment of revelation felt like standing in 2 timelines simultaneously, seeing my daughter and also seeing myself at her age, desperate for approval that never came. The memory of my own childhood tears swallowed back until they hardened into something bitter and permanent, overlaid perfectly with her present pain. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply nodded once, took my daughter's hand, and walked her away from the sink. The dish she had been scrubbing clattered back into the soapy water. "We are leaving," I said quietly. "But she hasn't finished," my mother protested, gesturing at the half-cleaned dishes. "Yes, she has." I grabbed a dish towel and gently dried my daughter's raw hands. "She's finished here permanently." As we walked toward the door, my father called after us. "Don't be dramatic, Abigail. Family doesn't walk out over a few chores." I turned back, meeting his eyes. Family doesn't make a 6-year-old wash dishes while her cousins laugh at her either. As we drove away from that house, silence filled our car. My daughter remained silent, her small body curled toward the window. I drove exactly 3.7 miles before pulling over at a park, getting out, and making a call that would change everything. The loan officer at First National had worked with me for years. He answered on the second ring. "David, it's Abigail Hammond. I need to stop the automatic payments on my parents' mortgage. Immediately." A pause. "The ones you've been making since 2019? That's a significant change, Abigail." "I'm aware." My voice didn't waver. "And I need you to process it today." What my family had long forgotten, or perhaps deliberately overlooked, was that I had been paying their mortgage ever since my father's stroke and my sister's disastrous investment that left them financially vulnerable. For 5 years, I had quietly shouldered this burden, asking nothing in return except basic respect for my daughter and me. Within 48 hours, their automatic payment failed. Their precarious financial situation and history of late payments had already placed them on the bank's high-risk list. The countdown to consequences began that very day. Within a week, their grace period expired. And within 2 weeks, the foreclosure notice was delivered to that grand house built on the foundation of my sacrifice. They didn't notice the financial earthquake immediately. Life continued as it always had, my mother barking orders, my father pontificating from his leather chair, my sister's daughters receiving preferential treatment in every imaginable way. To them, that house wasn't just shelter, it was a throne. And my child? A servant to royal whims. But thrones built on termite-riddled foundations inevitably collapse. Despite my exit, I remained in their contacts list, the financial safety net they took for granted. 3 days after I cancelled the payments, my phone lit up with my mother's name. Abby? Did the bank call you too? There must be some mistake. We got a notice about a missed payment. I watched my daughter playing in our backyard through the window, her movements already lighter, her smile genuine for the first time in weeks. No mistake, Mom. I stopped paying it. Silence. Then the familiar shift to manipulative softness. But honey, we thought you were helping us out of love. Family supports family. Family doesn't scream at a 6-year-old like she's free labor, I replied. Family doesn't make one child feel worthless while elevating another. She sputtered something, but I ended the call because for the first time in my life, I wasn't explaining myself to people who only valued what I provided, never who I was. Next came Bella, her voice tight with controlled panic. Abby, you can't do this. The girls love this house. Mom and Dad will be devastated. I took a steady breath. And where was that concern when they were calling my daughter names while yours laughed? They were just playing, she snapped. No, I said. Your kids play. Mine performs. I hung up, no longer interested in debate or defense. I didn't owe them explanations, justifications, or salvation. I owed one thing, protection to my daughter. And that began with dismantling the structure where her spirit was treated as an inconvenience. The official auction notice appeared on their door exactly 17 days after my decision. I didn't drive by to see it. I didn't need to, because the moment I stopped that last payment, I had already walked away from everything that house represented: control disguised as care, cruelty masked as discipline, favoritism presented as fairness. Instead, I focused on my daughter. I held her face in my hands and promised, you will never have to earn your place in this world again. Because they had taught her she was disposable. So I showed her she was undeniable. The family implosion was immediate and devastating. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone had an opinion. The group chat exploded with accusations of cruelty. My grandmother, who once told me girls like yours need toughening up, sent a 2-word Facebook message, "Why, Abigail?" I replied once, because you watched her struggle. Because when she wiped the table for the 3rd time that night while her cousins got second helpings, none of you said a word. But now that the house is being auctioned, suddenly I'm the villain. That's how this family operated, protecting walls that echoed their name instead of the quiet ones who maintained them. 2 days before the auction, my father appeared at my office door. He'd always known where I worked, the same firm that managed their finances for years. The receptionist had let him in despite my instructions, swayed by his family emergency plea. He looked smaller somehow, the arrogance diminished by genuine fear. Abby, please. The bank says the process is almost final. Can't you fix it? Just 1 more month. I set down my pen and swiveled my chair to face him directly. Dad, do you remember what you called my daughter the day I walked in? He shifted uncomfortably but didn't answer. Do you remember her face? How she looked standing on that stool, trying so hard not to cry. His eyes dropped to the floor. When she first arrived at your house, did she ask to wash dishes, or did you and Mom decide that was her job while her cousins played? Silence stretched between us. The girls need structure, he finally muttered. Which girls, Dad? Because from where I stood, only one child in that kitchen was being structured. He ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking every one of his 74 years. We didn't mean. You did mean it. That's the problem. I stood up, gathering papers into my briefcase. You meant every dismissive comment, every unfair comparison, every moment you made her feel less than. You meant it with me too, my entire childhood. The difference is, I won't let her grow up thinking she deserves it. She's just so different from Clara's girls, he said quietly. Quieter. More sensitive. She's a child, I replied. All children are sensitive until adults teach them not to be. You didn't try to understand her. You tried to break her. There's a difference. He reached for my arm. Abigail, that house is our legacy. I gently removed his hand. Then perhaps it's fitting that it's being sold. Legacies should reflect truth. As the foreclosure process concluded that spring morning, the auction happened on a Tuesday. Clean, orderly, final. I didn't attend because I had already walked away, not just from the structure but from everything it represented. Control, favoritism, emotional harm wrapped in the word discipline. The auction details were public record, and Bella had been monitoring the listing obsessively, hoping for a miracle that wouldn't come. At the county courthouse steps that Tuesday morning, Bella showed up, not to bid, she couldn't afford it, but to plead with the new owner, a real estate developer who cared about square footage and potential value, not family history or emotional leverage. Afterward, they moved into a modest apartment complex outside the city. The perfect family facade crumbled under financial reality. When your foundation is built on favoritism and silence, the collapse is both public and permanent. Meanwhile, my daughter began to bloom. She sang while washing dishes in our kitchen, no longer fearing criticism if water spots remained on a glass. I hadn't just cancelled their mortgage, I had cancelled the cycle of generational pain. 2 months later, the revisionist history began. Rumors spread that I'd overreacted, that I'd lost it, that I'd stolen their house out of spite. Bella told anyone who would listen that I was unstable, jealous of her perfect life and children. They conveniently omitted why I stopped paying, the sight of my child being humiliated by adults too emotionally stunted to parent with compassion. They erased the part where a 6-year-old was forced to earn the approval they freely gave to her cousins. I said nothing because truth doesn't need defending when you're finally standing beside it. Instead, I focused forward. I enrolled my daughter in a private school that prioritized emotional intelligence. We traveled, collected experiences, built memories. I started a foundation called Rise Before Rain, funded through the investment portfolio I'd been building since my 20s, redirecting the money that once sustained my parents' lifestyle. It was dedicated to children dismissed by those meant to protect them, therapy grants, mentorship programs, safe spaces. No publicity, just action. But word travels in professional circles, especially when you've managed investments for half the county. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction but creation, replacing what broke you with something that heals others. Family networks remained intact on social media, threads of connection I never fully severed. Distant relatives still text occasionally, "Come home." They miss you. Let the past go. But when they say home, they mean the house I saved then reclaimed. When they say miss, they mean they miss the version of me who remained silent. And when they say let it go, they mean bury it like we always did. I'm not a shovel. I'm a mirror, reflecting truth even when it makes them uncomfortable. My mother's sister calls occasionally, the only family member who acknowledged what happened without excuses. The truth is, I didn't destroy their life. I simply stopped financing the illusion of it. They built a house of hierarchy and called it family. I called it what it was, emotional debt, and I paid it off the day I walked into that kitchen and saw my baby girl being told she wasn't enough. As winter melted away and spring flowers emerged, changes bloomed within our home too. Spring came, bringing new growth outside and within. My daughter's artwork transformed, no more dark corners or faceless figures, but open skies and houses with her name proudly displayed on the mailbox. While unpacking boxes one afternoon, she held up a framed photograph from 3 years earlier, her standing beside my mother, shoulders stiff, eyes empty, forced smile. "Can I throw this away now?" she asked. I nodded, and she did without hesitation. That's when I knew the cycle hadn't just been interrupted, it had ended. Not with an explosion, but with a quiet child reclaiming her power, piece by piece. As for my parents, they eventually moved in with Bella. Her twin daughters, now sharing a bedroom instead of a mansion, learned the hardest lesson about privilege, its impermanence. Our sisterhood dissolved not with confrontation but with absence, phone calls unanswered, holidays spent separately, the bond that once existed now a historical fact rather than a living connection. Funny how the golden child suddenly became their only option, but gold flakes fast when you dig beneath the surface. The seasons changed, summer, fall, winter, healing arriving with each passing month. I haven't spoken to them in nearly a year. Not because I hate them, but because I love my daughter more than I'll ever need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding me. We still drive past that neighborhood sometimes. Every time, my daughter reaches for my hand and asks, "Are we ever going back?" And I always answer the same way, voice steady and certain, "No, sweetheart. We came back to ourselves." That's more than enough. Because the best revenge isn't a foreclosure notice. It's a little girl who no longer flinches when someone raises their voice. A home where no one has to earn love. And a mother who burned the blueprint just to rebuild something beautiful from the ashes.